Nora huddled in the corner of her nursery cell. The sounds of life and death swirled around her. From the courtyard, she could hear the laughter, cries, jostling, and whining of the herd. Younglings of all ages, none old enough for puberty, were getting their exercise. It was a disorganized affair, with some playing a tag game they remembered from a warmer time, and others rolling, kicking, and biting in the dirt. Nora smiled, a hint of melancholy in her expression, as her hands absent-mindedly caressed her growing belly. Only 5 years ago, she would have been a senior member of that herd, and in just 5 more years, her own child, a son, she was sure, would be a part of it. Of course, 5 years ago, my child wouldn't have been born in a nursery cell, Nora mused, gazing at her simple living quarters. For 8 months she had lived here, ever since the sniffers had discovered her pregnancy, even before she knew it herself. There wasn't much to see. A white linen sheet draped over a soft but lumpy mattress that still carried the scent of cleaning solvents from its daily wash. On the thin pillow, a stack of approved books waited to be read. A window in the wall looked out over the courtyard with no bars needed. A stainless steel toilet, cup, bowl, and sink with 2 nozzles, one for lukewarm water, the other for a thin, runny protein mush laced with nutrients and gene therapy. Everything an expectant mother and her child could need. The noise in the courtyard fell silent, as if a barrier had abruptly materialized between Nora and the children. She rose slowly to peer out the window. It was the first day of the new lunar cycle. 4 fluid forms moved among the children, who now stood on colored circles, each in their place. The children remained motionless, having learned through experience that movement would be painful. Only their chests rose and fell, and their eyes followed the beings that walked around and between them. To those unfamiliar with them, the Xyloth were figures of pure childhood fear, the beings that lurked in the dark in countless nightmares. Vaguely humanoid in shape, they stood merely 4 feet high, with hips as wide as they were tall and no legs supporting the shapeless lump that was their abdomen and torso. Their 6-foot-long bodies were carried by numerous bristle-like appendages, and their spindly, useless-looking arms spread out from slumping shoulders, each ending in a claw-like hand with 3 manipulators. Their heads seemed to be a fungal infection, bubbling gelatinously from the rest of their form, with no skull to protect their brain, relying instead on layers of cartilage, fat, and fluid for shock and blunt trauma resistance. A wide mouth with too many sharp teeth sat too high on the creature's head, and 2 eerily human eyes were the only other feature on the bulge of a face. While the Xyloth themselves were amorphous, their technology was quite the opposite. Around each of the Xyloth shepherds that guarded and controlled the flock, 4 angular metallic asterisks orbited. These mechanisms were what truly set the aliens apart from the human military in combat, being fast enough to intercept and deflect incoming rounds, determine the path of the bullet, and deliver a debilitating and often fatal burst of plasma, all before the human could fire a second time. With enough firepower, the orbiter could eventually be destroyed, but only at the cost of many human infantry. In a fair fight, protected as they were from various forms of weaponry, each robot averaged 10 men killed before it failed. This meant that to eliminate one Xyloth, the human military had to suffer 40 casualties of their own. Humanity was quickly overwhelmed. Nora observed as the shepherds moved among the gathered children, and ankle-high metallic insects scurried behind them. The sniffers, as they were known, tested the air for any detectable scents or chemicals. The whiff of a nitroamine could alert the aliens to sabotage. A human reeking of adrenaline could be neutralized before rebelling, and the presence of HGC in a woman would reveal her pregnancy to the Xyloth. But now the sniffers were seeking the first signs of testosterone in each of the young boys, a sure indication that he was ready. The girls would likely find themselves in nursery cells of their own one day. Yet each boy, just before puberty, would be sent to the Red Room and from there to the larders of the Xyloth compounds. The older boys eyed the sniffers warily as they scuttled at their feet. Nora's hands returned to her belly as the sharp pang that had put her on the ground in the first place came back. She sank to the ground again, reclining, and waited for them to pass. They never did. "No, it's not time yet," she thought, as the contractions became more organized and rhythmic. Premature birth was unheard of in the Xyloth compound. The biotic gel mixed with the protein slush of every mother-to-be ensured a nearly perfect delivery every time. "Ow, no, this isn't right," Nora said, gasping for air. She had never had a child before, but this couldn't be what happened. Pain radiated all along the length of Nora's distended belly. Even the touch of her shirt became too much, and she lifted it to look at her skin. Blood was pooling around her belly button. "What?" she gasped as the pain focused itself not in the hips and lower torso, but much too high up. A bulge was forming. Something was pushing its way out through her abdomen. Nora recalled volunteering. The surgery to implant the few supplies and the apparatus that would expand and mimic the movement of a child in utero, and even fool the scanners that the Xyloth used on her. The explanation that they could not take any chances and that her memory had to be manipulated. The last instructions given to her before she was put under, repeated over and over again until she could recite them word for word. The device now working its way out of her abdomen. She reached down to the gory thing and helped it on its painful way out of her body. With one final pull and gasp of pain, Nora freed the device. The primitive, reverse-engineered nanobots worked diligently to close up her wounds from the inside. They had been captured mere weeks before and were imperfect. The pain still lingered, but it was less, and Nora rose and moved slowly to the door. With one hand still cradling her now empty belly, she began placing one of the small-shaped explosives, smuggled into the facility inside her, on her cell door. It was time to sever the Xyloth's control over their robots. It was time to take the flock, no, the children, home. Rhett Collar Cyrus Ironforge wasn't quite retired anymore. This was evident due to the fact that he was currently looking through a pair of long-range passive infra binoculars at Xyloth breeding pens. The only reason he was still alive and hadn't perished during the invasion of Earth was that he'd been recovering from hip surgery at the time and was immobilized. The invaders had ignored the infirm and harmless. Had he been able to walk, he'd have picked up his own hunting rifle and probably would have been immediately hit by a plasma bolt. Not that he was a poor soldier or careless. Those were confusing and panic-filled days. Many veteran soldiers had been lost, though his most recent years of military service had been spent riding a desk instead of a Humvee. Warden earned his promotions from his ability to command, first a platoon and then a company, in the Second Afghan War. He had taken 120 men into battle against the Caliphate's forces, and he brought 120 men home. Where he had excelled was in the area of counterinsurgency, an area of expertise worth its weight in steel now that he was an insurgent. Of course, all of his knowledge pertained to human operations, but many of the strategies remained the same. IEDs worked just as well against alien targets as human ones. He surveyed the alien compound through his PIDs, pausing for a moment on the group of children in the courtyard. The 4 Xyloth shepherds, all of the damned aliens worked in groups of 4, moved around the children while their sniffers spent a few seconds near each kid. Near 2 of the older girls, the sniffers lingered for a moment longer, and once they moved on, the shepherds directed the pair of preteens to leave their circles and move towards the nursery compound. "Ready to be bred," murmured Warden under his breath. His frown deepened as the sniffers approached the form of a boy. Somewhat taller than the other boys and with broader shoulders, the boy observed with wide eyes as the sniffers approached. As expected, they paused for a moment before moving on. With no words spoken, the closest orbiter of one of the Xyloth shepherds let loose a blue bolt of plasma that struck the boy squarely in the chest. He fell to the ground, unconscious, but breathing. The attendants in the Red Room needed him alive. The remaining 3 orbiters gathered near the boy, and 3 beams of yellow light coalesced upon his form. Every hair on his head stuck out, and slowly he raised from the ground. The Xyloth shepherd began moving towards the back of the compound, and the boy's unconscious form floated behind him. "Negative Fang 2. Hold your fire. I repeat, stand down. Over." "Repeat that, Papa Wolf. If I don't engage, the child will be in danger. Do I have permission to take the shot?" "Over." Warden looked to Sergeant Anya Greysteel, who shrugged in response. Warden spoke into his radio once more. "Fang 2, stand down. We need to allow Mama Bear time to disable the automated defenses. Acting now will endanger the children. I repeat, do not take the shot. Over." Copy that, Papa Wolf. Safety's re-engaged. Out, came the reluctant response. He observed the large creature slither nearer, its countless tiny appendages moving. The sight unsettled Liam, his small heart beginning to race. But he told himself not to be too afraid, for Daddy would protect him, as he always said. Daddy had a gun and was in the army, after all. Liam's young memory did not recall the nights his mother had cried herself to sleep in the weeks before he was taken. Yet where was Daddy now? Liam knew for certain his father would come, as he always promised. He scanned left and right, but saw no sign of Daddy. It must be difficult to find this place. Wait, the robotic star-like object was starting to glow. Warden watched as the nearest orbiter to the boy emitted a blue bolt of plasma. "What the hell?" his radio buzzed. Gideon was breaking protocol, and the entire platoon heard. Warden would need to have Sergeant Curry address him after this was done. "Why are they taking a damn toddler? I thought—" Warden did not have the heart to tell him the truth, that sometimes the younger ones were taken to the Red Room, never to return. "Stand down, Fang 2. Maintain radio silence. Out," Warden said flatly. That was the only response Gideon would receive from his commander. "Falcon 104, Gideon broadcast. "What if that was my kid down there?" Warden was about to reply when Gunner Ironforge, the large man operating the platoon's squad automatic weapon, spoke over the EM band.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.